say the same thing about history, that history is beaded and plugged, and there isn't that much difference between myth and history, that the same kind of dominant motif emerged there as well.
Well, I think to separate myth fully from history is always a thorny problem. You know, I mean, socialism is a myth too, in a way. I mean, you know, I think there's a certain kind of sacrifice involved in socialism. I mean, the idea that one has to sacrifice, you know, goods to keep the revolution going, for example. I see the kind of myth that's part of Western civilization based on certain discrete kinds of narratives. I mean, myth can become really a broad, overarching concept within postmodern civilization. Of course, you can look at history as a series of narratives, which I suppose could be read as myths. But I'm taking more of a traditional, I guess, mythographer's point of view about the nature of myth. Myth as things like charismatic authority, totem systems, the sacred, you know, the whole dialectic of the sacred and the profane that's really tied up with myth. But yeah, I mean, I think certainly history today can be seen as myth in the idea that it's open to all points of view. I mean, you take a Derridian view of history, and history just goes. But I think you can also read that as a part of a symptom of anxiety about the disappearance of myth as a sustaining force of history. Don't you think?
Well, it's just case in point, so much of current-day popular culture deals with the retrieval of myths in music and detective stories and what have you, the icons, the symbols.
Oh yeah, sure. You've got. I mean, that's part of the retro mode, retro culture, whatever. Bruce Springsteen sort of combining Bob Dylan, Elvis, Motown, and even sort of like quoting lines out of rock criticism. I mean, it's almost like some of Springsteen's music is a kind of paean to a certain kind of scholarly notion of rock music's place in culture, and Prince combines the Beatles and something else. Michael Jackson does something similar, with the Sgt. Pepper allusions. Marilyn Monroe with, Madonna evoking, I mean, there's this tendency to look toward the halcyon days, when things were golden, when there were heroes who could institute meaning, who could create some kind of communal sense. I know when Elvis Presley died, there was a famous quote from Lester Bangs, this really fine rock critic, who said that, he saw Elvis instituting the youth culture, being the founding, primal father of the youth culture almost, and he said that with Elvis's passing, I won't say goodbye to him, but I'll say goodbye to you, which is really, if you want to look at a performer, a creator under the sign of myth, that's it as far as you could take it, I think, and there's a terrible underside to this process, which I call the sparagmos of the new mediascape. The tearing apart of the hero and trying to find palms, or relics. And this is part of the evisceration culture. The Albert Goldman, revisionist books about Elvis, saying that Elvis was not an angel, but Elvis was a monster. Elvis took drugs. Elvis was not the benign prince. After all, the same thing for Kennedy. And also for John Lennon. And all these figures now are torn to shreds, which is, it doesn't serve the old function of sparagmos, where you take a part of the dead hero's body and you eat it, or you save it, or you put it in your pocket, and then that somehow ties you to the golden age, and gives you this sense of contagious magic. But it's a kind of a sparagmos, the classical Greek notion of the tearing apart of the hero, within the sacrificial crisis of postmodernism, because what's finally being torn to pieces is not the hero, but it's us. You know, it's the idea that we were silly to ever have faith in these figures. You know, it's not asking us to say, well, after all, they were just, you know, human beings. Finally, you know. But it's saying that, you know, we, you and I were crazy to ever believe in Elvis Presley or John Lennon or, you know, but it's still accepting the fact that these people have some kind of heteronomic values, some kind of saintly aspect, some kind of godlike importance, which places them in this mythic pantheon. So the whole tabloid culture and the scandal culture is like the underside of the whole, you know, retro culture, because it just shows, I think, a kind of a general panic and anxiety as myth totally collapses without any pathway outside of that. And I think postmodernism or postmodern culture, as much as the critics are trying to avoid this, is involved in trying to bring back a totalized notion of meaning. It's really, you know, wholeheartedly trying to, you know, recoup a sense of meaning.
But it's in necrophilia about it.
Yeah, sure, and it's trying to, it's really, you know, closing down possibilities, because I believe, and it's not my belief, it's the belief of people who've looked at this in terms of anthropology, mythography, that I think the sacred closes down possibility. You know, I think it doesn't really open up possibility. And people ask me, well, what do you believe in? You know, René Girard says it's important to recover something in which we can believe, but that's a problem. You know, I think that my model is probably someone like Camus. If I had to choose a model, that just kind of keep on, you know, with a certain kind of existential faith, which is a problematical concept by itself. But I think that I'm not bothered by the idea of life being meaningless, in the sense of being without meaning in the traditional notion, you know, of Western meaning, which is really a kind of I'd say, mythic consciousness, you know, of meaning.